And now, back to America's Wealth Management Show, Dean Barber and your local advisor, Dan Fisher.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's America's Wealth Management Show. I'm your host, Dean Barber. It's time to join Dan Fisher. Dan, of course, is the local advisor that's part of America's Wealth Management Radio Network in Chicago. He is the president of Fisher Financial. And for the last 28-plus years, Dan has been helping those of you in the listening audience that are close to retirement or in retirement figure out all the complexities and really put it all together for you. He's got a long background in taxation and financial advising. And Dan, we're talking today about how people need to understand what's at stake when it comes to proper Social Security claiming strategies. And I gave an example in the last segment where a couple from a poor claiming strategy to a good claiming strategy could have as much, in this particular example, it was $155,000 of additional lifetime income from the exact same system, retiring at the exact same time with the exact same life expectancy. It's just understanding the intricacies of all of the spousal claiming strategies that apply to a married couple. $155,000 from the best to the worst. That's huge. That's a lot of money, Dan, especially in today's environment where we have such low interest rates and such volatile markets.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Dean. It's great to be back. And yes, you talked about that. And, you know, even though there's over $155,000 of a difference between the best and the worst, many people, you know, may really find that there may be some overriding circumstances. So, you know, the thing is that you can't just look at Social Security planning in a vacuum. There may be real-life situations that come into play. So, you know, the answers are not as straightforward as they seem. Other things may come into play, such as increasing household expenses, kids moving back home, you know, just to name a few. So, you know, it's where we do crank out the numbers and we do our job, and I think we all do a very good job in putting the numbers out there. But, you know, there's really other things that we have to look at.
Well, what you're talking about, Dan, is work. You know, mm-hmm. It's a process, and it's not something that an individual can look at one time and say, "Oh, I've got it all figured out, and I'm just going to put my plan in place and leave it alone." It's something that requires ongoing monitoring, reviewing. It requires understanding of the tax code. It requires understanding of a sequence of returns, sequence of withdrawals, and how all that integrates in. And you're exactly right. There may be certain circumstances where we might be able to show a person how to get the most out of the Social Security system, but that isn't necessarily the best thing for them to do in their own situation. And I don't want the listeners to make the mistake, Dan, of thinking that you and I are saying delay, because that's simply not it. In the example that we gave where there's $155,000 of additional income, the plan says that one spouse starts at 62, the other spouse then files a restricted application at age 66 and then files for their own benefit at age 70. So it's not all about just whether you collect it at 62 or 66 or at 70. The problem is, Dan, that when people go to the Social Security Administration, they're not getting this type of information. They're getting asked, when do you want the check to start and where should we send the check to? And it's up to you, ladies and gentlemen, to go to the Social Security offices and be able to tell them, this is how I want to do it. And unless you know how to do it, you can make huge mistakes that could cost you tens of thousands of dollars. That's why Dan Fisher, president of Fisher Financial, is offering for the folks in Chicago and surrounding areas to do this calculation for you on your Social Security benefits free of charge or obligation. Here's what he'll do. He'll run your claiming strategies through his software that'll cover all 81 different claiming strategies and give you details on that, and then in writing show you how to get the most out of the Social Security system so that you have a form, you have a documentation to take to the Social Security Administration to allow them to understand exactly what you want to have done. In order to have that done for you, you have to qualify. In order to qualify, you need to be within 5 years of retirement or have already retired with at least $250,000 of investable assets, and then you got to call 877-500-0350. That's 877-500-0350 for your free Social Security analysis. Compliments of Dan Fisher, president of Fisher Financial in Chicago. Call right now, 877-500-0350, and go to our website, americaswealthmanagementshow.com, where you can pick up our Baby Boomers Guide to Social Security, americaswealthmanagementshow.com. We're talking now with Dan Fisher, president of Fisher Financial. Dan, I want you to talk a little bit about the taxation of Social Security, because it's not only important what you make, it's what you get to keep.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is that people are tend to be short-sighted. They want everything now. And with taxes, you really have to plan for not only this year, but for 2012, for 2013. And you have to see how Social Security integrates into a person's tax situation. So, we have to take into account their provisional income, how much of their modified adjusted gross income is going to be subject to tax, things like that. The thing is, before I forget, though, I wanted to emphasize, going back to your retirement plan checklist, number 15. My retirement plan takes into consideration the effects of taking Social Security early and the long-term impact of not only how much I will receive from Social Security, but how it affects my ability to meet my long-term goals. Well, taxes is part of the goals, reducing taxes, the sequence of withdrawals, and how we take our money from the buckets that we talked about, the taxable or non-taxable bucket or the tax-deferred bucket. It all impacts a person's situation. So things are not as clear-cut as they seem, as we talked about before. But what we can do, though, is we can do those projections, for people, and make sure that they can make an informed decision on what to do going forward.
Well, you're talking about a very complex math problem when it comes to putting together a person's overall retirement income strategy, because there are many questions that have to be answered, and where that income comes from, you talked about the sequence of withdrawals, that's going to determine how much taxes you're going to have to pay, ladies and gentlemen. Many people out there think that investments, they're a matter of opinion and taxes are a matter of fact. Well, the fact is that during retirement, folks, you have a unique ability to control your taxes, unlike during your working years. So you can decide which account to pull from first, and you need to be working with a qualified tax professional as well as a qualified advisor that can understand the tax implications and the longevity implications of how and when you're spending that money. And that's what Dan Fisher, president of Fisher Financial there in Chicago, really does for you. It helps you put it all together so that you know that you've got a well-integrated plan that's taking into consideration taxation, risk management, asset allocation, and asset strategy and structure, along with your legacy goals, to make sure that you've got the right plan in place heading into retirement. And you spoke, Dan, about that retirement plan checklist, which is a 30-question checklist that's part of my new book, Retire a Winner. And that checklist is designed, ladies and gentlemen, to get you to step back and think about all of the opportunities that you need to be taking advantage of as you head into retirement, and all of the risks and how to mitigate those risks. That particular checklist, Chapter 8 of my book, Retire a Winner, it's called your Retirement Plan Checklist. It's available on our website. For anybody in the listening audience that's within 5 years of retirement or already retired with at least $250,000 of investable assets, our website is americaswealthmanagementshow.com. That's americaswealthmanagementshow.com. Dan, when people sit down to plan their retirement and they get it put together, this isn't something that they can stop. They've got to review on an ongoing basis. How often do you suggest that they sit down and review their overall plan once they get that plan established?
Well, absolutely. I think that as often as they would like. Obviously, not every day, for coming in, and, we don't want them to be office mates. But on the other hand, as often as is required, I think, is the correct answer. Some people or some advisors say, well, we do annual reviews. Well, how much can happen in a year's time? A lot. So, we say, ordinarily quarterly, but some people need to have things revisited every other month. Some every month, as a matter of fact. And we're available all the time. And I think that it's very important to have a line directly to a person you can talk to, not really just a 800 number where you get a recorded message, or somebody who is uneducated in these complex situations that we confront.
All right.
So I think it's very important to review, and I think you're dead on that.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's Dan Fisher, president of Fisher Financial in Chicago. Get your free consultation. Get your Social Security analysis done by Dan Fisher, 877-500-0350. Thanks for listening to America's Wealth Management Show. I'm Dean Barber along with Dan Fisher. Dan, we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Dean. Take care.
I'd be rich